Welcome to the bar tonight. We have Dr. David Seaman here. Can't wait to get this show started. So much to talk about. Inflammaging is going to be the big topic of the night. Let's make it run. Dr. Seaman, welcome back to the bar, my man.
Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Man, super pumped. Tonight means a ton to me. It's just been such a year, and I just can't think of who better to talk so many topics related to health than you, my man. So tonight's going to be a really good one.
All right.
I do want to start off with, what are you drinking tonight?
I have some iced tea, regular iced tea in this Zeddy, and I have my trusted measuring cup with Cabernet.
I appreciate you bringing that back.
A cheap bottle from Trader Joe's, which is they got a lot of 14%. See, if you get red wine, I learned from a friend of ours who is a wine aficionado. I checked out their expensive wine closet cabinet thing, and every bottle of wine that they have is like 65 to like $150. They're all 14% alcohol or more. Now, I'm not saying that for the alcohol perspective. I'm saying because these wines, they taste better. So if you buy a cheapo bottle of wine and you go higher with alcohol, it just tastes a little bit better. It tastes less vinegary.
Okay. I'm going cold brew martini, not in a martini glass.
Nice.
That's my drink of choice. Yeah.
Nice.
It's actually really good. So on all the social media pages, the recipe is there. It's hidden secret. You have to go see the social media pages to check it out. But it is a must drink, especially around the holidays. Absolutely delicious. A must try. So David, I guess you're going to have to head over to Instagram and see what's in the recipe, how we made it, the whole deal. So that'll be really awesome. Man, the main reason we do this is because we always do a cheers to charity. So we like to bring awareness. Dave, please tell us a little bit about the charity that you are sponsoring tonight.
Well, I like dogs, always have loved dogs, and I have pictures even to this day in my little archives section of my dog that my parents got because I didn't like fast-moving things. I was just freaked out. So I miss my dog desperately, and so I love dogs. I just don't have one. So it's the Halifax Humane Society.
That's awesome.
And Halifax it's the Halifax River. It's part of the Intracoastal. It's the Intracoastal Waterway in different areas. It's called the St. Johns River in some places, Halifax River elsewhere. And so we are called Halifax River, and so they call themselves the Halifax Humane Society.
That's awesome. Man, tonight, I want to dive right into it without any further delay. I want to talk about one of the most important topics in our health, and it's something that gets overlooked all the time. But your book, and especially one of your most recent books, I think highlighted this so well. And if you look at the reference pages, I think it's on like 20 different pages, you talk about this idea of inflammaging. Can you define for everyone exactly what that means? It's a big word, seems confusing, but I think once we get going with that topic, it makes a ton of sense. And there's so much to understand the different interplays between it. But can you define what that means?
Yeah. So the term inflammaging happens to everybody. Whether you're doing a nice, graceful aging process, that would be called anti-inflammaging, which means that you're aging gracefully. But if you pro-inflammage, you develop chronic pains, chronic diseases, and you die long before the time that you should. So we all should endeavor to anti-inflammage. And the reason why is because no one can live forever. Like I turned 60 this year. Just think what year it is now. I turned 60 this year. I've got 30 years left max, probably. So if I take care of myself, I can hopefully anti-inflammage and not be disabled, decrepit, and needing nursing home care and all the rest of that business. I'd rather just not go to a doctor or a hospital and just croak on my own when I'm 90 if I could, or earlier, depending upon whatever happens to me. But that would be graceful inflammaging. So the goal should be not to develop chronic pains and symptoms like depression and then other diseases that go along with it that you die from, like heart disease and cancer. So dying young of cancer is a perfect example of brutal pro-inflammaging.
Everyone that's watching live, we are answering your questions as we go throughout the show. So please put those in the comments. We appreciate all of you shares on social media. David, I loved what you said there and how easily you summarized that. the idea is that we are all aging. And I was reading a really great paper by a controversial psychologist in the 70s, and Ivan Ilyich, and he talks about this idea of what he calls social iatrogenesis. It's a big word, but the idea is this over medicalization of things that are natural processes of the human body. So meaning the overcomplication, the fear tactics that sometimes can come across with it, meaning emotional states. Sometimes we like to put a name to those and then make it way more than it actually is, when actually it's a normal human emotion for individuals to go through in tough times, etc. But what I loved about what you said is that idea that in the ideal world, how we want to age, we're going to have inflammaging occur, but we want that to occur gracefully. We don't want to see this rapid state of decline. But the reality of what we see all of the time, unfortunately, especially in America, is we see this non-linear rate of decline, meaning from 20 to 30 or 30 to 40, we may all look back a decade and say, yeah, maybe I don't feel as good as I did 10 years ago, but I still feel pretty good. And then they go from 40 to 50 and feel like, okay, well, man, that wasn't quite the rate of decline, but it still felt pretty, I'm not in my 20s anymore. You'll hear things like that. But then there's this point where it's almost as if we get coached that, well, this is how we're going to continue to age at this rate. But if health markers aren't in check, if we're not doing our best, watching what we eat, exercising appropriately, there becomes this time that is not predictable of a rapid state of decline. So where they might have thought, oh, I'm 55 and I'm going to slowly coast this way and age gracefully, that there are processes happening in the body at times where this is going out of control, or there's at a point where they're going to rapidly decline. I think so many in the comments can think of a loved one that they've seen that has unfortunately went through this process where just last year they were doing great, but now, oh my gosh, look where they're at now. And I think this just really hit home this last several weeks. We've seen many patients that we haven't seen in 7, 8, 9 years. But now that we're seeing them again, several are doing really, really good. They look better than they did. But so many, it has just been devastating to see how they're doing and some of the things that have happened in their health over the last bit of time. So I don't know if just the nature of the COVID lockdown has made that more apparent to us, or if it's just something that naturally after being in practice over a decade and each decade you go, you're going to feel more of that. But I think there's no one better to speak on this topic than an expert like yourself, and to just wrap our mind around that and shed some light on that maybe that you are in your 20s or 30s and you're seeing a loved one that maybe is near that point where if they make the right changes right now, some great things that occur that could be very attainable, that don't have to be overly complicated. You don't have to hire a dietitian tomorrow. You don't have to sign up for a meal subscription service that is going to, 4 times the cost of that normal meal to you in your home. But you can make the right choices.
Yeah, it's really not that complicated, but people do like to complicate things. Part of the reason why they like to complicate things like exercise and nutrition is because in general, most people don't like to exercise or stop eating unhealthy foods. And that's why about 75% almost of the US population is either obese or overweight. Like 42% of the adult population currently is obese. That clearly demonstrates they want to keep eating crap. Like no one's overeating broccoli. What'd you eat today? Got to eat 6 pounds of lettuce and 5 pounds of broccoli. I mean, I'm really feeling terrible. Right? So they don't do that. And they don't exercise. They don't want to. And so things that we don't want to do, we complicate, and we complicate in our mind so much that we find ourselves saying, well, it's so complicated, I can't do it. So I go online and, one person says this, one person says that. It would almost be like the debate about whether you're actually for core stabilization. The old argument is, well, should you brace or should you hollow? Either one. Do something. Do something. Right?
I love it.
Before I have all my muscle imbalances fixed, I should do nothing. No, go do something. Don't hurt yourself, but go do something. So people get scared into basically what paralysis by analysis is, a common old phrase. Well, there's so much confusion out there about that. I don't know what to do. Really? Have you heard that vegetables ever are bad for you? No. Start there. You don't have to go spend thousands and thousands of dollars to have someone tell you to eat vegetables. Like if someone wants to go onto my website and sign up for an hour consultation with me, I'll tell them to eat vegetables. They don't need to do that. They should just eat vegetables, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
But they're just afraid though, because people live in all this fear and then they lack self-efficacy and then they spiral.
Yeah. When we step back, and we could go through every nutritional trend that's ever happened, but I do love the idea of what you said is just do something, pick something, be consistent, make a life change. If you're checking your weight regularly, if you're getting a physical and you see what your health markers are, one of our favorites is if you slowly tiptoe up to the wall and your abdomen touches the wall before your nose, probably a good idea to make some change, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty good one. And it's simple self-screen. We don't need to write a book about it. We don't need to make at-home tutorials. It's literally a sentence long. Like this is a great opportunity. But apathy is the one that we're the enemy of all, right? This idea that we're just not going to do anything, to hell with all of it. So we've got to watch out for that. But then it comes down to this initial, okay, well, if I'm going to make some change, do I start nutrition or do I start with exercise? And that's a very common question. And if you had to pick one that was 51% lean this way versus 49 the other, and they haven't made any health choices, what's your first opinion?
I think anyone can just go out and walk a couple miles a day. So there's no reason for that not to happen. And then, of course, you can start eating better like tonight or after. If the people who are listening to this live, afterward, if you've eaten dinner already, and we're done, and when we finish at whatever time, it'll be 7:30 your time, I guess. They shouldn't eat anymore until the next day. It can be that simple, the first step, and then wake up, have a cup of coffee, go for a walk. It can start tonight and tomorrow morning, and not get complicated.
One thing we did a really long time ago is when smartphones first came out, we wanted to just start tracking how many calories we eat a day. And we did that. And this was about 12, 13 years ago. So we started, it was a complete, just absolutely pain in the butt. It was miserable to do. You could write on paper, you could be about exact, but whatever. One thing now, if we are going to do calories in, calorie out, like if we just step back and look at the simple idea of I'm looking to lose a little bit of weight, etc., counting calories is actually a pretty attainable thing now. With these different apps, they can scan the barcode, and if it's a fruit or vegetable, pretty easy to type in there. Yeah. So I think the hard part is because the nutrition industry seems to profit off of confusion by making there so many options, choose this supplement, and then we just resort back to our very primitive, pretty colors, lots of bold font, buy that one, right? That's our nature, is that we get this idea that none are going to work. Like, oh, counting calories doesn't work for me. But the reality is that if someone does have a weight problem, being in a caloric deficit seems to work every single time, right? I mean, the science behind it is pretty incredible. That's where we've got to be. And there's a lot of different options and ways to be there, but pick something. But when we're thinking health decline, healthy aging, inflammaging, and those processes, tie that together for me as we go through the lifespan. So if I'm someone that, yes, my goals align with exactly like you said, I want to be age 100 and be able to do 100 push-ups, right? That's my goal. Right. If that's the trajectory I want to be on, but the come to Jesus meeting I need to have with myself is that, well, the health markers are not saying that I am on that trajectory and willpower alone is not going to be enough. I think that I've just got an infinite amount of time to make that health change. We know that that's not reality. So at some point, as quickly as tonight, you can start making simple changes that head the right direction. How do we start turning that around?
Well, everybody has their own, I guess, trigger that would get them to start to turn it around. So one needs to look at, well, I look around at old people everywhere because now that I'm 60, I'm like, damn, I'm old. And I don't want to be that guy at 70. I'd like to be that guy at 70. Like I play golf with a guy who's 79 and he can hit the ball in the air 250 still. I'm like,
It's awesome.
well, he's also a pro, but the point though is he's 80 years of age.
It's awesome.
So if you take that guy right now and put him on the course that we play, and you put Jack Nicklaus out there, this guy would beat Jack Nicklaus, and they're the same age. And the reason why is because Jack Nicklaus is a horribly aged man. You compare him to now, golfers out there, for whatever reason, how could you say that about Jack? Because it's true. If you look at this last Masters tee-off, you saw Gary Player, who's 84 or 85, and you look at Jack Nicklaus, who's 80. Gary Player moves like he's 10 years younger than Jack Nicklaus and he's 5 years older because Gary Player used to be kind of like made fun of a little bit for doing push-ups and sit-ups and whatever he used to do on tour in the old days and all of his fitness stuff, but he knew that he had to be fit. So you look now at those two guys and you say, man, Gary Player is the guy to be like. So why didn't Jack do it? I don't know. Nothing triggered him to be like Gary, even though he was more like Arnold Palmer, who was actually more fit, but busy smoking cigarettes. There are old pictures of Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer on tees at major tournaments, puffing their cigarettes. Gary Player did that. Yeah, different era.
Yeah,
and a lot of them did that. But so why didn't Jack Nicklaus somehow get motivated? And it's really hard to say what would trigger somebody to do it. So I cannot answer that question. What you have to do, I think, is, well, let's just use the golf example, just because, first of all, it's very difficult anyway. If you're 80 and you're retired and you have all this free time, do you just want to sit around and be decrepit? I mean, is that what you want? To be decrepit and to be sitting there like just this useless human being? I mean, that's what happens to people over time. Now, it's not like a Jack Nicklaus because he's still running his business and his kids are running it and he's all mentally engaged there. The guy's loaded, but the average person who is not that person is sitting at home, breathing with an oxygen tank, a cannula up his or her nose because they didn't take care of themselves at all. So to the audience, I cannot say what will motivate you. You've got to look into the future and ask yourself where you want to be and look at people who are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years older than you and look at who they are and where they are. And if you want to be that person, then there are very clear health issues that need to be addressed. And Gary Player is a perfect example of it. The guy basically weighs now what he weighed when he was playing on the tour. That right there is your first and most obvious, visual trigger that you could see, or visual image that you can see. Say, okay, I've got to be like that guy. So you got to take out the tape measure and get your belly flatter to the point where all the inflammatory markers are normal. CRP is normal, glucose is normal, triglycerides is normal, HDL is normal. Just those four. If they're all normal, you're pretty metabolically fit ultimately. So that's I know that I didn't give an answer because there is no answer. You got to figure it out for yourself. It is truly it's an introspection thing. It's a self-inquiry thing.
And I appreciate that you were able to still spend 5 minutes answering a question to really say it's individualized. And that's what we love about you. That's what we love about you. No, but the tenets there are incredible, right? So the highlights are, number one, there still has to be something that you're looking at and you're headed towards. And it doesn't have to be a drastic change. And I think that's what we see all the time in so many people trying to make big health changes. The mindset is right. The motivation is right. But sometimes we're not looking long game enough and they make such a dramatic change that's unsustainable long term. And then all of a sudden they get back to that same apathy train and just say, to hell with it, let's have 3 burgers, 2 milkshakes, and then let's just give up. Yeah. And I think that's the hardest part because like we've talked about before on the show, is that I fall into that same category of I am a big time emotional eater. I love to eat my feelings. If this is a great week, I want to go celebrate with a lot of food because food brings people together and there's great conversations, at least pre-COVID, is a great way to have great social experiences. Humans have done it for ages, but I like to just keep hammering food the whole time. That's what I have to fight at all times. I love smashing a ton of food in a social setting. I think it's incredible. Eat my feelings when I'm sad too. I think that's a great thing to do. It feels great. Let's go. The whole thing ice cream, one setting.
How many people do you think are like you?
I think it's a lot.
All of us. All of us.
Yeah.
Because biologically, primordially, we have to be the way you just described because historically we couldn't go over to, you couldn't leave your house after we finished this talk. We can both leave our houses, depending upon obviously where one lives, and drive a quarter of a mile, tenth of a mile, 5 miles, and have food galore everywhere. That did not exist historically. As a consequence, people have been biologically driven due to what in environmental training to want to eat as much as you can all the time because you don't know when the next famine is going to strike. So we have to fight that tendency, and everybody does. And you just described the tendency that everybody has. Everybody wants to eat, particularly when they're stressed out. So this whole COVID-19 pound thing is very real. It's very severe. And you're going to see, I don't know, probably by the end of next year, you're going to see a whole lot more sick people in America. And it's not just due to the COVID, it's because you cannot be obese and hyperglycemic and gain 20 pounds and become more hyperglycemic and then have a good year. It just won't happen. Yeah. So our biological system wants us to be fat because the next famine might come and we need to live on the lean with not a lot of calories for say 2 or 3 months. If you're not fat, then you're going to die. So that's why animals fatten up every summer, spring, summer, and fall. And then they starve, right? Because if you are a deer, what are you eating all winter long? You're sniffing around for who knows what, particularly if you're in cold places. In the summer, man, I saw deer all over the place when I used to live in North Carolina. Deer all over the place playing golf. Family of deer munching away because they have to, because winter's coming. If they don't fatten up, they will die. That's the exact same biological drives that we have. The problem is that we have food everywhere. We have deer food stops everywhere for human food, and we can stuff our faces until we're literally going to feel like we're going to explode. So that is, everybody has that. So people who are listening should not think, well, I've got a little bit of a food addiction problem. Yeah, everybody does. Yeah, you have to. If you didn't have a food addiction, you would be dead. Think about that. Yeah, I don't want to eat. Yeah, 1 year later, dead. So you have to have this. The problem is,
that is true.
Right. So that is the battle right there. The battle is that we all want to overeat, and the problem is that food is always there. So we have got to force ourselves not to do it and cross the threshold of the inflammatory scenario, but puts it into a pro-inflammatory state that will drive chronic pain, depression, and horrific aging. Or dying from COVID. Who wants that?
When you think through exactly what you just said, so we have this natural instinct to we crave food, we need it. Some will have that more than others, right? Certain people are better at using that frontal lobe to overcome that idea of that, I have this craving and I'm hungry. We've also been through a generation, whether it's food advertisement, whether it's the preschools who make sure they have a snack every 45 minutes. There's this idea that hungry is bad. I would love for you to speak a little bit about the idea of if someone is a little overweight or has some inflammatory markers and is looking to make change there, what is your take about being hungry?
Yeah, that's a really good one because there's a couple of ways to look at it. So the easiest way to get over the whole hunger thing is to do, I think personally, from experience doing it, is doing the time restricted feeding, where you pick the time at night when you're gonna stop eating, and you make sure that you don't eat for at least 13 hours, hopefully 16 hours. And you're going to feel hungry during that period, depending upon the day. Sometimes I'm more hungry than not. Sometimes I break it earlier than I would prefer to. but I almost always go 13 and then 13 to 16. So you get used to feeling hungry. We don't have to worry about it because focus on whatever you need to focus on. And when you're focusing on, now that's the problem with basically being home with this whole COVID lockdown thing.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of people are at home and they don't know what to do with themselves. And so what they should do is go out and weed their yards and work on their yards or clean their house. Do something to get your mind engaged and off of food. Now, no one has been locked down where they can't leave the house and go for walks. I mean, how horrific that would be. So then go do that. Stay active, stay busy. Don't let your mind sit there and go, oh man, I just can't wait to eat. I can't wait to eat. I always can't wait to eat. I just try to occupy my mind with something else that I'm not considering, oh my God, yeah. Because it's right over there, I got food.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that hard battle, right? So that having a purpose, it still comes back to the same things. There has to be a goal we're aspiring to. Humans are goal oriented. If we have our eye on the prize and we're going there, even if it's a long game goal, it makes it a heck of a lot easier and know the why behind what changes you're trying to make and how to get where you want to go. I think that's the toughest thing for so many is that they instantly feel hungry and they don't cope well with it at all. I know that I, for a really long time, struggled with that idea because I guess several reasons. But one of the solutions that I've enjoyed recently that Dr. Ethan in our office said I had to bring up to you is the strategy of when you're hungry, taking a bag of shredded lettuce that is 25 calories for the bag, then taking a little bit of Italian dressing that's mainly just vinegar based and salt, cut the little corner off the bag, put a couple tablespoons in there. You're hitting about 30 total calories. Shake the whole thing up. And now just consume this as a midday snack and force yourself to get this down. Number one, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not great. I enjoy it very minimally. But the thing afterwards is the hunger dissipates greatly. Yeah. Now, nutritional value, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'd say it's pretty low. But the satiety level is pretty damn incredible. I mean, I'm not hungry at all for a solid 2 hours after. And it was like 30 calories and water is what I would break it down to. But what's your take on that as being a strategy?
Great strategy. Any strategy that one can come up with. So what I will do is typically as I'm getting close to I didn't do it today. I do it probably 6 days a week. When I get up and I'm in after the 13 hours and it's like kind of like hungry, I will just get some psyllium husks that contain virtually no calories, put it into a water, shake it up. It's like a glob of unsweetened kind of almost applesauce, like pure fiber. Drink it down, drink more water. And if I do it, if I weigh myself, now this is not like weighing yourself like habitually freaked out obsessively. This is just to see if you weigh yourself, drink a big glass of psyllium husk and a glass of water, you get back on that scale, you'll be 2 pounds heavier. Your belly will be full and you do not want to eat at that point.
Hey, talk about that a little bit more. So psyllium husk, is that the, I don't know if you'd call it active or inactive ingredient in Metamucil? Now we're talking to the Deflame billboard. Yeah, so psyllium husk, are you saying straight Metamucil? Actually move it over and a little more right there. Boom.
I'm back.
Past this. There it is. Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
Psyllium husk powder.
It's just powder.
So not Metamucil. Not Metamucil.
Well, Metamucil is more expensive. And it's flavored in a fashion that I'm not crazy about. So yerba prima.
You don't dig the orange? The orange cream?
Yeah. I don't go for that. Yeah. I just do the psyllium just because I want to embrace psyllium. I'm not going to do the additional whatever other stuff. But listen, here's the thing. That's me personally. Otherwise, do the orange. The orange is certainly better than not doing the orange. Yeah. And so, but if you want to get just the powder, you got yerba prima at health food stores. You can also get Now Foods has also the psyllium husk powder. And so you just put a couple of tablespoons into a shaker glass and drink, shake it up, drink it up, and then drink some more water. And man, you just you feel the mass in the gut. Now, I don't always, when I do that, I don't always feel, if I was really hungry, I don't always feel not hungry at all, but I feel like I'm satiated enough where I'm not being bothered by the hunger. And then I have a couple more hours when I can go. So, but I like your idea. This is another one. So if I was in your office running around working and I'm feeling a little, empty on the inside, I would do a psyllium husk drink. Nice. And then just drink a bunch of water and then rock and roll. Because even water itself can fill you up. If you drink 20 ounces of water straight or 30 ounces of water straight, you kind of feel pretty full. Yeah. And you get going. You go. And then you don't think about it anymore. And that is the big thing. But again, the problem is, because you're describing in the office, but you're treating people running around all focused. If you're locked down, like they're going to be locked down, it looks like California is turning into a gulag practically. I mean, they're like full-on lockdown, it looks like, what's coming. And, what do? Shelter in place and eat what? Potato chips? So that is a big...
So that's the hard part.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's
big
where
part.
I come from too. If someone is, obviously if you're comparing the two, I'm going to hit the 2 tablespoons of psyllium husk or I'm going to hit a Big Mac, right? That's pretty easy black and white decision. But if you're looking at calories alone and fiber, does psyllium husk have a caloric level to it from a digestibility at all?
I mean, there's calories in it, but almost. Let me check the bottle. Let's see.
Read that label, David. Read that label.
One rounded teaspoon has 15 calories.
Got it.
And but the blood sugar penalty is non-existent because there is you basically get nothing absorbed. So I probably do 2-3 tablespoons. So it's semi-thick, and I just keep adding water and more water, and then you just feel, boom, you feel full, and then you go do something and don't even think about it. Now that's actually, that fits right into the whole pro-inflammaging thing, because if you do that, well, then you won't eat something then and then eat more later, and next thing the entire day is one big eating fest, and then 1 year later you're 30 pounds heavier, and then you look at yourself in the mirror, or something, you get injured, or something bad happens to you, and then you're laid up, and you've got this totally unhealthy body that now looks like it's 10, 20 years older in just 1 or 2 years. Yeah. It's horrible.
It is. We had a couple questions come in talking about when we talked about the idea that apathy is obviously the worst. And then we have the nutrition side and the exercise side. So if you're going to pick, I'm going to make some changes. We want to talk about the category that chose exercise heavy first. So if they chose exercise heavy first and they got into a routine over several months, now they're consistently exercising but haven't made diet changes. But now that individual started taking on the idea of that time restricted feeding, that 13-hour fast. Mallory just asked the question, what is your opinion about being fasted in that 13-hour period and then doing a workout? What are the pros? What are the cons? Or should you not pay attention at all?
It's fine. I mean, think of it like this. Let's just say that we are, so everyone who is currently listening and watching, and you and I, we are all living in the same little community, and we got to go hunt for our food, right? So when are you going to eat your biggest meal of the day? Right before you go for a run? No, you're not going to eat then. You're going to get up. You're probably going to have some water, maybe nothing, and then off you go. Because if you're going to be chasing animals or climbing trees to avoid being killed by an animal who's chasing you, potentially, you need to have a belly that's not full of food. So it's very normal. It's very normal to exercise in that fasted state, and that's no problem at all. Now, I suspect if you're talking about high performance stuff, there's probably some little tweaking that can be done, but in general, no issue.
Yeah. Alec had asked on the idea of that higher intensity level. If weight loss is not a goal, they're already highly active. They're very healthy. Every health marker is pristine. Would you say that there's any benefit to doing the time restricted feeding?
Yeah, because it'll maintain. Hello, cute little child. Hello. What a cutie. So yeah, there is. There is.
Yep. My daughter needs her apples opened, and that means you rotate the stem, and now that is called an open apple.
Oh, interesting. So the reason why you want to do that, even if you're not, is because fasting overnight more than 13 hours is what you need to do for just ongoing support of metabolic fitness, which means basically for the people who know what mitochondria love it when you do your fasting. Very beneficial. So it basically helps support mitochondria and muscle health long term to be in that state, because you push metabolic fitness when you're in that time restricted feeding state, which is very anti-inflammatory. So we should do it no matter what. And just think again,
Awesome.
Imagine getting up and having to like hop on a bike and go miles and miles pedaling and fairly intense, and your belly's full of, it's ridiculous. You want to get up and go. I mean, there's no need to like be constantly eating. Some people say, just eat once a day. You said you were doing that last time we spoke, right?
Yeah, I did that for almost 10 weeks.
Yeah. Now let's just say that you're a bodybuilder. If you're a bodybuilder, is there a time limit where you should avoid it? I don't really know, because the average person out there, that isn't, how many of your patients are professional bodybuilders and needing to know if 13 to 16 hours, which hour is the best? Of course,
exactly.
Virtually none. Right. So this is kind of like, those are the outliers, and I don't spend any time with outliers. I can tell you across the board, everybody should be doing at least 13 hours. So think of it like this. It's everybody listening right now either knows someone, maybe themselves, who had breast cancer. It was shown very clearly those women who had breast cancer, after they were treated for their breast cancer, recurrence was far more intense, or far more likely, is if they, or let's do it this way, far less recurrence if they fasted more than 13 hours a night compared to less than that. So you just hear that, it's like, why even just because in the end, let's say this guy who asked the question is 30, dude, 60's coming soon. It happens fast. You want to have your system used to certain healthy behaviors that will carry you into a long-term anti-inflammaging lifestyle.
No,
I can tell you
awesome.
for myself right now, if I do dumb things, because I got various musculoskeletal issues just because of pathoanatomy stuff. I've had a small rectus diastasis my entire life, which means I cannot create the kind of intra-abdominal pressure required to be like a power lifter. I would just explode. My guts would all come flying out of my little teeny rectus diastasis, right? So you don't have to go ballistic like that, but you need to live in that lifestyle as long as you can, forever and ever and ever. And that sounds kind of weird, but for as many years as you can, living in a scenario where you always make sure your overnight fast is 13 hours, it'll keep you healthy longer throughout your lifetime. And that's the best way to look at it.
Yeah. And I think that is the key. And several physicians who focus on the idea of that wellness into to the end stage of life, to that centurion-like goal, do speak about this idea that at some point, either we're maximizing our health and fitness for a short-term goal, like our early adopters, our early specialized sports like gymnastics, etc. Well, if you're trying to peak by the age of 19, there's some sacrifices that need to be made. If you're trying to peak by the age of 24 to 29, there's sacrifices that need to be made. But then after that, we really need to be setting our mind on the goal of how do we age gracefully and prevent as much rapid decline and inflammaging and also inflammation that we're accidentally bringing on ourselves. We need to not do that. So I love that idea of that goal. And Alec, who asked that question, said he was really hoping that you would say no, that there was no benefit for him because he's incredibly active and works out extensively.
Well, the interesting thing, though, is that people who do that, if they're not careful with their calorie sources, they can still develop. His last name is Noakes. He's a Australian or New Zealand exercise physiologist, and he was a marathoner or an endurance athlete, and he ended up, I think, having a heart attack, perhaps. And he never, and now he's a ketogenic diet guy.
Oh, okay.
Because he knows he was wrong. You cannot live on pasta forever, right? If you're healthy, and that you need to, you're programming your physiology to behave properly and to extend your life. Yeah. That's what this is for. And when you're young, you can take advantage of it because well, I'm just thinking about when I was teaching at the two different chiropractic colleges that I taught at. Final exam week was always like, it was like hell week for them. It was like rushing. It was hell week rushing for a fraternity. They keep you up and they just torture you. That's what final exams are like. And so every quarter when I was at Palmer and every try when I was at National, I would see these like really strong, fit people look like hell at the end of final exam week, no matter how fit they were, because they're sitting, studying, and obviously not exercising, and typically eating a little bit inappropriately too. So by the end of the week,
sure,
they feel malaise, like they've come down with the low-grade COVID.
Yes, yeah. And Buffy just shared a great anecdote in the comments about how she went on this journey with time restricted feeding, and her A1C numbers completely changed, lost a bunch of weight, and has been able to keep it off. And I think the key is, for so many people, the struggle is, though, and I really want you to speak to this, it's that transition, because we are so goal oriented. Where we see the biggest trouble with so many people is that let's just talk my expertise, which is musculoskeletal pain. So muscle, joint, nerve, tendon pain, and getting them back to doing the things that they love. One of the things that we commonly see is that we're going to be massively strength training with people. We're going to get them out of pain, fix their range of motion, but we're going to be doing all these great options for care that we offer in the office that allow them to strengthen, to stimulate the healing process, to do their best, and to cope better and treat whatever indirect reason they have for their issue. But something very interesting that we see is that when we're guiding them through that, they will get incredibly stronger. Like we just retested someone today. When we tested their initial quad strength, they could only create 60 pounds of pressure on one side, and the other side was about 110. But now they're at 170 and 170. Right. Wow. And that's through a treatment plan. They're getting massive amounts of strength gain because we specialize in getting them stronger. But the same thing we see frequently is that they will be like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I'm doing great. I'm so glad I'm here. But now we discharge them. So now, high five, big hugs. We actually have a great thing that we do that's really exciting, that we actually shoot a confetti gun. Every time somebody graduates, they do a great job. They pass their discharge testing, and they're out of there. It's a whole lot of fun, man. It's incredible. So we hit them with that. But the problem we see all the time, and a lot of it's been in this COVID window, is that they'll be gone 4 or 5 months. And that transition out of our office where we go, all right, you've done amazing. You've done everything we've asked you to do. You've done great in here. You're feeling better than you've felt in years. But now that transition to the self-efficacy side is a big struggle. So, for example, something we see a lot of times for individuals when it comes to they're making big health changes, they're changing what they're eating, they've lost a bunch of weight. That transition from I've lost 20 pounds and I'm at my goal weight now, but now maintaining that without going back to where they were before, it's almost like there's this, we don't set that second goal. That goal, ooh, I just need to lose 20 pounds. Awesome. But if we readapt the habits that we had from 3 years ago and we don't continue on the new habits we've worked so hard for and those great life changes, that's that yo-yo dieting type fad on accident, even though they might have been doing it right. What are your thoughts on, they set the goal, they lose the weight, they've been doing the time restricted feeding, now what? So for the one that's prone to just blowing it up, I got there, now let's go to the Mexican restaurant, let's smash 4 things of chips, I'm killing it, 2 margs, head home, hit some dessert, wake up, pancakes, Karo syrup. Yeah. Here we go. So how do we not do that? What's that transition? Because I know a lot of people that struggle with that. I hit my goal, awesome. Now let's celebrate by going back to the same habits that got me here on accident.
Isn't that a weird thing? to
It's a
like actually,
wild phenomenon.
yeah. Well, part of it has to do with the fact that we love those foods, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I love them too. It's not like I've got great willpower. I mean, I just don't want to. I feel it more like I don't want to suffer any more than I'm already suffering, because life in general, if you look at what Buddha said, he says life is suffering. I mean, think about going through basically elementary school. All the kids come home, they're crying, they're suffering. I think maybe up until 4, you don't even think of it. Everything is just awesome until kindergarten starts. And then you got to deal with this or that. And then it starts. And then you have these some people have horrible memories from when they were young, and they did this, they did that. And it's like life is difficult, right?
Yeah.
So we need to embrace that it's difficult. And part of the difficulty is dealing with the fact that we live in an obesogenic environment. It's actually a scientific word. You can actually go into PubMed, the scientific search world, or you can go into Google or whatever else and just put in obesogenic environment, and scientists have defined it. So when people come out of the obesogenic environment, they come into your office, you do your manual care, your rehabilitation work, get them fit. They go back to the obesogenic world after they leave your input. And so with the confetti gun going off, you got to give them something to keep them on track. And I would say the easiest thing is go get a glucometer and get a simple tape measure, and make sure your waist tip ratio always stays where it is now that you've finally achieved your goal. And make sure you use your glucometer every day, every other day, every week, whatever it is, to keep your glucose in the normal range. And if it goes higher, that is, so you make a very objective markers your metric for your eating, as opposed to I feel better, I can go again. I mean that's just such a horrific thing to do to oneself ultimately. Because what will happen usually is that, as you know, people will typically gain back more weight than
Exactly.
Yeah, and that is a very common thing. And the reason why is because, and I don't know how long it takes, because I haven't looked at this enough, but it's called the body weight set point. So I forget the first one that we did, maybe, because this is our second, or I guess our third, I think. The first time we did this, I'm like, dude, you shredded. I think you tell me, you lost 20 pounds, right?
Yeah.
So you could easily gain that 20 pounds back potentially.
So easy. Do you know how easy I could do that, David?
I know. Exactly.
So easy.
So anyone can do it. So what we need to do is, it's called a body weight set point, and I talk about it in my Weight Loss Secrets book, which, by the way, is, I mean, it's kind of funny. My brother goes, you made it too cheap. It's like 99 cents for the Kindle, it's like $13 or something like that for the paperback. He goes, it's too cheap. I go, I don't care. I want people to just spend $1 and get the thing, so they learn the secrets of weight maintenance. So there's no barrier at all. Like, I got to go to spend thousands of dollars to go to this weight loss guy. No, just spend 99 cents if you have a Kindle and read the damn thing. And the chapter on body weight set point is very important. So here's what they found. This is really huge. So scientists use the OptiFast program, which is one meal a day. You have like a salad, something like that, and then you do the OptiFast foods. It's like 500 calories per day, and it's brutal, like literally starvation. So they track the hormones. Now you have hormones that make you want to eat, and you have hormones that suppress eating. And so a hormone called ghrelin. So just imagine a gremlin, but without the M in it, and you got ghrelin. But ghrelin is as bad for us as the movie Gremlin with the evil gremlins. I mean, it's like the evil eating gremlin. So if you have been obese and you drop 30 pounds rapidly, like in 2 or 3 months, 1 year later, the scientists found that the hunger hormones that were pushing them to feel hungry, to eat more, were still elevated. Now, the way you get over this is, it appears, is that vigorous activity resets your set point.
Yeah.
So let's take you now at 20 pounds shredded compared to before you did your shredding, and you were to go out, like say for, like, if you got a big old belly, squatting and doing weeding is like painful. You must want to be on your trying to get on your belly, just kind of pulling, right? So what I do, because being on my hands and knees for a long time screwed up my hips a little bit. So now what I do is I do squat weeding. I do like wide sumo wrestler.
Let's
and
go.
I squat down and I pull weeds that way. I'll get up. I'm like, God, this sucks. Get back and do it again. Now, if I was 20 pounds heavier, there is no way I could do that. I would just feel this big, huge mass of gut in the way. So your body weight, so your hypothalamus, which is where your set point for body weight is located, it resets itself based upon your activity level.
I love it.
Yeah, that's really, so exercise resets your body weight set point. There's nothing, and plus exercise, and it has to be at an aggressive enough level. I was telling this, it's really funny. Years ago, I was telling this one individual, third of a patient, I guess, exercise. She goes, well, I walk and I'm still hungry. I go, yeah, but you got to walk to the point where it's difficult to talk to somebody. If it's difficult to talk during exercise, you've achieved your threshold of intensity that typically is appetite suppressing. So if you just walk along talking to a friend on your cell phone, you can walk for 3 miles and just think about food the entire time, right? Because there is no intensity. You got to hit the intensity up. And I learned this. I wrote about it in the first D-Flame book, where my first experience really learning this was I was flying out someplace. It was a Saturday trip, so I had to be at the airport at like 12, I guess. So I was up at 6. I was working. I'm like, oh man, I want to exercise real fast. About 10 o'clock. I need to leave at 11 o'clock. So I went ballistic for 45 minutes, showered like a maniac. And I hadn't eaten at all since like 8 o'clock before. I'm driving to the airport, going through the line. I haven't eaten now in 16 hours. I'm like, I'm not even hungry. How did that happen? So, and I was hungry before I exercised. And the exercise did the appetite suppressing activity. That is really important for people. So it needs to be intense. And it could just be 10, 15 minutes of intensity. Or it could be longer. You got to find out what your level is and do that so that you suppress the hunger feelings. Otherwise,
I think it's great.
Otherwise, you will be obese again. There is no way around it. Now, my brother, who was on the cover of my weight loss book, he's 10 years younger than I am. He's 50. He developed a true. So think about true spasmodic torticollis or cervical dystonia. I mean, the actual basal ganglionic disease. It's not very common in chiropractic offices or physical therapy offices because manual care kind of messes them up. What they really need, it's really interesting. What they really need is stabilization type training. Is really what these people need. So my brother, who cannot exercise at that level of intensity, he has to be far more mentally vigorous with his forcing himself not to pig out, because he does not have the luxury that you and I have to go exhaust ourselves with exercise. Yeah. Or to reach the intensity level that will be appetite suppressing. So in his case, he has to be mentally strong. If you are marginally mentally strong and you do your activity at a level that suits your body weight, then you'll have a new set point and you won't have that scenario that you just described.
Yeah, I think that's the take home. Right. I think that's the message we could leave on. And I think it's where we should wrap up. I think it's the take home needs to be that if we're going to exercise, or if we're going to step into this world and be realistic about where we need to go with our health, there's several different places we can set goals. We can make very aggressive goals that are short term, or we can make very long term goals, or both. But the reality is, just like you spoke about with exercise, what is the actual goal we're trying to obtain? Because you talked about if you could do 15 minutes of vigorous exercise, you can get the appetite suppressant level from the exercise. And that can be enough if you're able to start focusing on your health and watching what you eat and being a steward of consuming the right amount of vegetables, et cetera, and upping your vegetable intake. That can go exceedingly well for a lot of people. And then there's other exercise pieces that we can do later. But I think the biggest thing is set the goal, make it reasonable. Let's do what we need to do, but don't make it so dramatic that you can't say, I couldn't stick with this for 5 years. So if in your mind, you're going to say, oh, I'm doing this diet for like 30 days, but there's no way I'm doing this for 5 months or 5 years. Oh my gosh, no, that would be criminal. Why would I ever do that? If that's where we're getting to, I think we need to have a real come to Jesus meeting with ourselves and say, okay, what is attainable? How can I make this happen? But let's set some big goals, and let's also be reasonable about holidays. It's okay. You gain 4 or 5 pounds over the holiday. A lot of times that's water weight and sodium intake in that one day. To consume and add on 5 real pounds doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So don't necessarily beat yourself up over it. If you're doing a good job about watching what you're eating, doing your time restricted feeding, and then you have Christmas happen, and then you're like, to heck with it. I might as well just eat cookies all the way till New Year's. Like, that's not the take home. No. That it's okay. You are in control, and give yourself some grace with that, but be consistent and know that you need to do the right amount, but it doesn't have to be as complicated as you think it has to be.
Yeah, and the other thing too is in terms of goal, because we're entering obviously the intense holiday season with Christmas and New Year's and all the rest of it, is so my parents are 85 years of age, and neither one of them has metabolic syndrome. So they're both likely to live, unless something bad happens, for another 5 or 10 years, maybe longer. I'm really grateful that my parents have taken care of themselves. Because, awesome. I mean, who wants to live their life without their parents?
Yeah.
I mean, assuming that you have good parents, which I have great parents, right? So my siblings are so happy that our parents take care of themselves. So if you are 60 and you're like, I don't really care. I mean, what a selfish mindset to have. Because you have your kids who are, 40 or 30 or 20, wherever they are. You're going to die in 5 or 10 years, and now your kids will be parentless. It's horrible. I mean, I learned, every time I talk to my parents, I'm like, God, I've learned more from my parents in the last 5 years than I have previously. Because now I'm like older. I'm like, yeah. So it's like, I wish I have a picture of my grandmother. Well, I'll leave on this. My college graduation. It was me, my father, his father, and his father. Can I tell you how cool that is for me to look at?
So cool. So
and
cool.
My great grandfather, he lived to be 96 because he weighed the same weight he was the first time I met. Well, he was more frail at that point, but the guy basically was active until he was 96. So I'd say make that the goal, because if you don't care about yourself, think about your children and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren.
I think that's it, brother. Be that great grandfather or be that great grandmother. That's where you're setting the goal. So if you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for them, because they don't know how much they're going to need you.
They're absolutely. I am so glad I can still talk to my parents.
It's awesome.
It's awesome.
David, cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Everybody, you've got to check out deflame.com. The book is incredible. All of them are incredible. We've got The Wave, but my personal favorite that everyone has to check out, literally, I can't tell you how many patients we pass this on to every day, but this one breaks down so many conditions, and it's basically free on Amazon at this point. You're literally giving it away. But this is such a gem in the healthcare community, breaking down what actually happens to our body with inflammation, etc. We'll post it in the comments. David, thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to have you on in season 3. I've got a million more topics for you.
Cool.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers to you. Have a great Christmas and New Year's.
You too, man.
Thanks.